Deborah House, Realtor with Prominent Properties, Sotheby's International Realty here in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. I have the pleasure of interviewing Sable Smith today and listening to all of the exciting contributions that she has made towards Black history. Sable, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, Sable, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, that's always such a difficult question. I am an artist. I currently live in New York. I teach art at Columbia University. Yeah.
That's quite exciting. What made you get into art?
I mean, I feel like I was always a creative person and like a creative child, and like the way I learned was from like kind of taking things apart, putting them back together. I'm a visual learner. Like I could never comprehend anything if it was just notes or like reading. I always had to have something sort of active related to it. And so I think that making things and being curious about things is just like how I process and experience the world in general. So it felt like a natural way to exist and sort of develop and kind of create a profession for myself. But I think realizing that was a possibility came a lot later in life, but it was just kind of like
your
my
calling. Your calling.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, from my understanding, you are also an activist. Tell us more about that.
And that's interesting. Well, I mean, I think the word activist is very popular, I think, right now, especially like in like media and social media, which is also now kind of replaced media in some ways. So it's like almost like the word is ubiquitous. And I think that, you know, there are things that I do in my professional and my personal life that contribute to, I don't know, moving things forward.
Right.
But I don't know, I sometimes hesitate, or I don't necessarily call myself an activist specifically, because there are people who are activists who are on the ground, like organizing and working and like coalition building like 24/7. And that's not exactly what I do, but there are things that I do in my personal and professional life that I think definitely contribute to a number of causes that, you know, could fall under the umbrella of activism in moments.
Right. Wow. Okay. What is your experience? How has your experience being Black in your line of work? Tell me more about that. You know, what's that like?
Well, I guess it affects and sort of influences every aspect of my life and everything that I do. And I guess because I have this sort of art practice and then I also have a teaching practice, I'd say that it's probably one reason why I also became interested in teaching in the first place, because I feel like, you know, just reflecting on my education sort of trajectory, I had a couple of Black teachers and professors, but I didn't have many.
Right.
And I know like what attention was given to me, what space was sort of carved out in all of the other institutions or like with professors that I had, that, you know, I was a motivated student, so I think I was able to sort of move through some spaces, but then sometimes I felt like, you know, I was just like taking my education into my own hands and I was kind of guiding myself as opposed to having a whole support system around me. So then it became important for me to think about, okay, what does my physical presence look like in an education space, and how am I going to approach both content and education and look out for and notice certain students differently than, you know, any of my colleagues would. So I think it has probably most specifically influenced my desire to teach and my teaching practice and my approach to teaching, especially teaching in like predominantly white institutions also.
Yes, and I'm sure your experiences are similar to some of the other experiences that people of color face. And, you know, we have a lot of challenges. We've made a lot of progress, but we also still have to be mindful that those are practices that, you know, we experience every day. So, yes, so we're definitely going to talk more about what you do and some of your pieces. And, you know, I would love to hear about that. So how has being Black influenced your design work?
Okay. Good question. I mean, I feel like one, just like the content and the kind of stories and the narratives that I'm interested in telling in my work. They relate to my personal experience moving through the world, and also my experience of being a Black person moving through the world. And so I think that also is not like exclusively unique, but oftentimes if you walk into a gallery or a museum, you don't encounter work that is speaking to your specific subjectivity. The majority of the work is thinking about a different perspective or a different version of history.
That's so true.
So I think that is my kind of like primary focus. And also I'm interested in like popular culture too, and bringing, I guess not creating a hierarchy between what is valuable or what is seen as art and what is like low art or high art. And so in those ways, I think it's sort of reflected in my practice.
Okay, great. And what artwork are you most proud of that you've completed? What's your masterpiece per se?
Oh, masterpiece. I would say the project that I'm most proud of to date is also probably like the most ambitious project that I've made. And I'm proud of it and sort of excited because I was actually able, I had an idea and I was able to see it sort of come to life. And it was the piece that was in the most recent Whitney Biennial. And I think also without the context of that show and being invited to participate in that show, I don't know when I would have gotten a chance to make this piece. And basically I have this series of sculptures that I've been making that are riffs on prison visiting room furniture. And this is a monumental scale piece that basically is sort of made to look like a Ferris wheel. It has this kind of haunting, slow revolution.
Right. Wow, that's quite interesting. I would love to, at some point, see some of your pieces. They sound just magnificent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So Sable, everyone should know I am Sable's realtor, and Sable and her family had a great experience with me, but art goes hand in hand with real estate and architecture. So, what role does a realtor play in your world and art, and what would you do differently, or what advice would you give to anyone that's looking for a home?
Okay. What role does real estate play in my world? Or personally, my mother's a real estate agent, so I think I talk about and look at real estate all the time. So that I am surrounded by it,
yes.
Which I also love. I mean, I'm interested in sort of architectures and interiors, so that also is a kind of other influence for creativity. And then I guess also, since I make visual art, usually, unless it's a sort of museum scale piece, the art eventually finds its way into a collector's home. So it's always a kind of fun and beautiful experience when I get to see the work in someone's home, and also see other things in their collection and see the things that people decide to live with. That's always sort of fascinating to me. And the second question was... Your
home experience was very pleasant. It was wonderful working with you and your family. What role do you see that you can articulate to our viewers that a realtor plays, especially in the Black community?
Yeah, I think, I guess even though my mother's a real estate agent, and I'm kind of inundated with the vernacular and the vocabulary, and I do have a reference point for what the job sort of entails. This also was the first home that I ever bought, so even with that kind of close proximity to the industry, there still were tons of things that I didn't know. So I think that, and also just talking to some of my friends who are interested in eventually owning a home, or people who just bought a home, right? There's I think especially for the Black community, right? You need a realtor who actually is going to care, give you time, right? Not just sort of rush you, right? Because I have to get on to the next client, or just because they're trying to close a deal. You need someone to really help walk you through the process and sort of educate you, and that's with the realtor, but then also every other person and sort of entity that is a part of that process. And so it was really important to be able to feel like we had agency and power to ask questions or slow down, or to just learn in addition to moving through the process.
Right. Well, I know that we were able to close on your first home, so congratulations. It's
Thank you
quite
very
exciting.
much.
It's a beautiful home. But is there any advice that you would like to share with our viewers in regards to, getting off of the fence and building wealth through real estate?
I think the initial thing that comes to mind, and also the thing that I've even been reflecting on as I've just been talking to different people about the process, is that it actually is more possible than we believe, or a lot of people think. Everybody's like, oh, well, I'm not in a position to be able to do that. I have to wait next year. I have to wait 5 years. And I'm like, if you actually just sit down, find get a referral for the right team and people, mortgage officer and realtor, and you can find out that it actually is a lot more possible and attainable than you think. But I think we're just socialized to think that it isn't possible, and so then most people don't even begin to take the step to see, or it's 5 years or 10 years from now before they take the step, and then things are different, or you could have been building equity, or you could have changed your financial situation through this process. So,
well, thank you so much for your insight on real estate. It's something, like you said, it's one of those components to life where we feel like it can't happen, when all in fact it can with the right team. Thank you very much for that, and like I said, enjoy your new home.
Thank
you can also own a home. Sable, now we had a beautiful time purchasing your new home and looking at various homes. Now that you have the home of your dreams, what does home ownership mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess first it's about a certain type of stability, and also taking control of our finances, right? Like renting, you're giving money away to someone else. And here, right, my money actually creates and will continue to start to create value for me. And so there's something that is ours that we can place our money into. So that investment is also back into me and my family, as opposed to somewhere else. So that's really, I think, important. And also, historically, Black people have always been sort of pushed out of home ownership, so it also feels important in relationship to that legacy. And then me, I'm a young person who now owns a home, and I can my friend group, my community can see that for people who don't own homes yet, and we can help educate each other, and that is how I think it could also sort of multiply. And then thinking about, if you own something, that's a different investment in the community that you're going to live in and too. So that's the kind of second phase that I'm excited for to explore more.
Well, I'm very happy that you made that choice to become a homeowner, and I hope that many of you out there understand that home ownership is possible. It's attainable as long as you have a strong team behind you. So, start to be mindful of what your credit scores are and how you spend money, and work towards owning a home. So, who has been your biggest influence in your career?
This is a good question. And I guess there's probably 50 different ways I can answer this question. And I don't think that there's been one specific influence. I think at each step of me deciding and figuring out that I want to be an artist and actually pursuing that, there have been these different conditions and or people who have facilitated that. So probably first my mother, who has always told me I can do whatever it is I want to do in the world, and I believe that. A lot of people get told that and they don't believe that, so they're not just moving through the world saying, well, I can do this, and then trying to do that and then seeing what happens next. But I never felt any fear actually of trying something, or thinking that there were some impossibilities in front of me. So I feel that's important, because also being an artist is such a precarious, it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to sustain yourself or make a living or make a comfortable living off of it, or even get your work seen. Nothing is guaranteed, and there is no path, right? It's not go to school, do this, and then you can become an artist. Like, it's a huge gamble. So I think being a little fearless is important. So yeah, and then maybe I think there's one artist that I really love. He passed away. His name is Robert Colescott, and he was always sort of making art that was, I guess, very kind of like contentious and or controversial, or like created some dissonance for whatever time. So like he was making a lot of art in the 70s and the 80s, and he's like thinking about race and identity, and like at each one of those times what he was doing was in tension with, you know, what other communities or larger communities of artists were interested in like promoting at that moment. And I've always just been really attracted to his work, and also attracted to, I don't know, that I guess maybe it's a fearless kind of idea, or just like, you know, you have your own kind of drive and necessity, and doesn't matter if people aren't on board with it, or, you know, it isn't recognized in that moment or championed in that moment. But you have to do what it is you feel called to do for the reasons that you're called to do it first, and then whatever happens externally, but you kind of have to answer to yourself.
Right, absolutely, I agree. Wow, okay. And this question can have so many answers, but what do you find is your why? Or why do you do what you do? And that could be anything.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I teach because I don't think that there is enough, or probably will ever be enough, even if, like, I don't know, tomorrow 1,500 young Black artists sign up to go teach. That still isn't enough to offset and sort of balance out what the education landscape looks like. And I think my presence in the room before I even start to sort of present material has an important impact and an important difference. It makes an important difference. So that's why I continue to teach. Because it isn't a very glamorous job at all, you know, but it's like, it's important to me, and it's important that I sort of continue to sort of participate in that space. And then, I mean, I make art for myself, honestly. And then, I mean, that's, if I don't have that motivation and that interest, then like it's going to show, right? It's not going to have the same energy or the same resonance that it has. So I do it for myself, and then sometimes it enters the public space, and that also is nice, but I think it's more important that it has value for me,
right,
and how I move through the world.
Wow. And, you know, you're just so amazing. You have so many great thoughts and ideas. What does the future hold for you personally and professionally? What are you looking to do? How are you looking to grow and manifest all of this greatness?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so I am a visual artist, but I also love to write and do write. So like, and I think probably maybe my first passion was like writing and filmmaking. So I want to carve out some dedicated time and focus and attention to write, and then just like continue to expand and explore all these different sort of spaces. I mean, I'm also really interested in theater. That's like my favorite pastime. So I go to theater a lot. I read a lot of plays, and been like doing small experimental things. So those are, I think, either genres or sort of spaces that I'm interested in exploring. And I don't think that there necessarily has to be a boundary around like, okay, well, you started off, you're successful as a visual artist, so you have to kind of stay in this lane. So yeah, there are other things like that that I want to explore, and that I'm kind of excited to figure out and find more time and opportunity for in the future. Yeah.
Well, Sable, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing with our viewers. And you've had, you know, so much great insight, and you're just, you know, my personal inspiration, and I'm sure that you're inspiring so many others. So I hope we can sit down again and have a deeper conversation about other topics. And I really appreciate you.
Thank
and
you.
Again, Sable Smith, everyone.
Thank you.